I built a small handheld game called Space Drop. At first glance, it looks simple, because it is. Objects fall from space, you shoot them, if any hit the ground, game's over. Then you try to beat your high score. That's the whole game. Somewhat challenging, but not too challenging, and very gratifying. I decided to use a classic potentiometer for the movement control. It was clearly the way to go. And for such a cheap part and simple code, the fluid movement coupled with that satisfying click from a tactile button was so addictive. So I locked it in and I started working on the PCB. I typically like to make all of my projects on a 55 by 55 millimeter footprint. But here, it was just too cramped, so I increased the length by about 50%. Even with the extra length, it still felt a little bit cramped, but instead of making it bigger, I thought maybe I would just try to do something with the potentiometer hanging off the edge. For the display, I chose the trusty 128 by 64 I2C OLED. It's a very common, easy to find display with plenty of library support. For the fire button, I used the common 12mm tactile button. It's a good size and it's super plentiful and easy to find. One of the simplest but most important parts was the control knob. I bought a bunch and tried a lot of different things, but ultimately I just ended up 3D printing one that felt just right. For sound, I'm using a simple little passive buzzer. And for power, I chose 3 AAA batteries with a 3D printed holder that doubles as a support for the potentiometer. I chose alkaline over LiPo because they have a much better shelf life. The full game only pulls about 13 milliamps, so these batteries can last for about 60 hours of continuous gameplay. I designed a simple little auto off circuit that has 0 current leak when it's off. This handful of components allows you to turn the game on by pressing the fire button, and the code does the work of turning it off after about 30 seconds of inactivity by switching the control pin low. And finally, the brain. I chose the D1 Mini simply because it's smaller and it's so darn cheap. I tried to make the PCB as self-explanatory as possible. I kept all of the resistors the same value, so you don't have to worry about soldering the wrong value in the wrong place. Everything else is pretty clearly marked and mostly obvious. An important thing to be aware of is to solder the battery holder and the display last. This is because a few of the components are positioned underneath, and if you block those holes, you won't be able to solder them. Now we need an enclosure, and I created a more open design, so it lets some of the character of the PCB come through. Instead of having to put screws in, I made the board just click into position. There we go, Space Drop. If you want your own Space Drop solder project, I'll have a limited supply on the store.